Thank you. Again, I'm Dan Cavanaugh with Corol Engineers. This is Julian Chavez, AECOM. This is AutoCAD P&ID and Plant 3D, an introduction to your project database. So we're kind of just going to be walking through just some database commands, workflows that can just show you how you can work with your database, manipulate your database, and show you it's not as scary as or intimidating as some may feel that it is. So clicker don't want to work. So basically what I just said, we're going to cover the use of databases in AutoCAD P&ID and Plant 3D and give you some tips and ideas on how to work with that stuff and just the capabilities that it does provide. So at the end of the class, we're going to learn how to migrate, move, copy a project database, understand how to navigate through the database tables, and do spell check. Understand how queries can be used to extract valuable information from the database, and then learn how to modify some project database components outside of the project manager, which can be useful because I know when I want to make a selection list change or a valve label change or something like that, everybody needs to get out so I can spend 15 minutes doing something. So there are a few workarounds to use sparingly that we're going to show you as well. So just to get started, we're going to migrate, move, and copy a project. So what you want to do, there's a in the P&ID install folder on on all your C drives. There's an AutoCAD P&ID installation folder, and in there's a little thing called the Pnp project maintenance utility. If you click on that, it brings up this window here that gives you your options: convert from a SQLite to a SQL Express, move a project database, and copy a project database. Now those last two requires a SQL Express project. You cannot move or copy a project database in SQLite using this, but you don't need to since all the information is contained in that one folder with SQLite. So just to get started, I'm going to grab the sample project that is also provided in the app data roaming folder, and I'm just going to copy that and throw it on my desktop. So this is just a sample project that comes built in with all AutoCAD P&ID and Plant 3D installations. It's just a simple, 2 P&ID drawing files just to kind of get your feet wet and kind of poke through things. So I want to convert my project. So make sure that's clicked. Then I will make sure I'm not pathed to the one that's actually in the install folder. Go to my desktop. So here's the sample project that I just threw on there. So I'm going to grab that project XML. Then here, obviously you need to have a SQL server already set up for any of this to work. For this demonstration, I just installed a local instance on my C drive so I didn't have to worry about VPNs or networks or any latency that can cause issues with that. So just... So just put in, that's my computer, and then that's, the machine's identity, and then this is the name of the instance that I have installed. And then for my database prefix, let's just do EU 2015. I always use Windows authentication in most enterprise network environments. That's the easiest thing to do. You don't want to have to handle more logins than you need, so I always use the Windows authentication. If you need to use something else, you probably need to discuss that with your IT guys. And there is a white paper. It's using or implementing SQL with Plant 3D and P&ID. So it walks through, takes you through SQL Server Management Studio and how to set up different permissions based on, the network environment that you're running in. So that's a very helpful document. So now that I've pointed to the XML that I want to convert from SQLite into full SQL Express, server details, add my prefix, I'm just going to hit convert. And so what this is doing is it's taking those DCF files that are in your project folder. If you have a SQLite and you open those DCF files and it's basically just gibberish, what this is doing is taking those files and kind of converting them into the SQL format, then modifies the DCF file to just point the project to your SQL database. I'll show you those DCF files while that's doing it. There might not be anything in here. So this is the sample project, the process power DCF. This is the database file that houses all the P&ID information. You'll have 4 of those: process power, piping, ISO, and orthos. Let's see how our little utility is doing. All right. I've successfully converted to a SQL Express. So I'm going to just hop into SQL Server Management Studio, and you can see that what I just created is now in SQL and much better than SQLite. So now that we have that on there, we can explore the other 2 utilities or options that are available in that Pnp project maintenance utility here. And in the handout, I have provided the most likely paths to where that is on your computers. So you should be able to find that. So now that I want to, well, actually, I want to copy it first. So I'm going to copy my project. So when you do copy a project, there's, on just my machine alone, copying the project sort of defeats the purpose, but sometimes you want to archive it, sometimes you want to just move it to a backup server, or shoot yourself in the foot and actually try to manage 2 databases for the same project. So what I'm going to do is, so the sample project over here, I'm going to just clean some stuff up real quick. So the sample project, I'm just going to copy that guy. So I know what its name is. I'm going to go back to my utility. I'm going to browse to that. And so I just made a copy of those DCF files, which I'll show you those DCF files. So this is the new DCF file. That's when you run the utility. It takes that gibberish, and it's the same exact process power DCF file. It just takes that and just organizes it for you. And then, as you can see, this is the information I put in. And then this is the prefix I gave it, and it will always append the 4 databases with underscore P&ID, underscore ISO, ortho, and piping. So, just to show you that. So again, and I've done this to myself in the past. I was going to copy a project just to have some fun. I opened it to get to the XML. I grabbed the project, the original XML, and ran the utility. And when the client came in the next day and to take a nice look at the good work we'd been doing, the project wouldn't open. So be sure, because it all looks the same once you get into the folder itself. So you want to make sure that what's up here is the project you're looking to copy. So there's that. Again, we'll just put in our server details. So here's our SQL server. We just have our sample, don't have our copy yet. Same steps, path, enter the server details, and just hit copy. And wait a few minutes for, a 2 P&ID project, it's pretty quick. If you've got 50 or 60, be prepared to wait. And it says not responding, but it is. Any questions while we're hanging out? Carollo. Successfully copied. Mm-hmm. So, over here. So I'm just going to refresh my SQL really quick. If I did it correctly. There we go. So now you can see I've copied the project. Sometimes it takes a minute. And again, depending on your network environment, a lot of you guys might not have access to SQL Server Management Studio. System admins are a little, picky about who they let into certain environments. Love it. So I'm showing you this just, so you can kind of see what it's actually doing in SQL Server Management Studio, but you can access these tables through P&ID and Plant 3D, and I'll show you guys that here in a minute. So yeah, we've copied our projects. Everything's all copacetic. And so now that I've copied that, maybe I want to move my copy. So go back in, open it back up, and I want to move it. So I want to move my copied file, so I just point to my project XML, and since I only have one SQL server, it'll be the same, but if you are truly moving it, it'll most likely be to another SQL server, just to let you know about that. Yeah, to do all this stuff, you have to be a system admin in SQL Server Management Studio. So if your IT folks are a little weary about that, they should know that they can control permissions and only give you system admin rights to your specific databases. So there are ways to kind of drill down those permissions and figure out a way to make it work. So same process each time. You just, it all looks the same. You want to be cognizant of what you're doing, which XML you've pathed to, and making sure you're using the correct prefixes. And if ever in doubt, you can always test your connection. And if you want to, you can always generate a name, which I've always found to be incredibly helpful. So I don't recommend doing that. So yeah, for naming your database prefix, a lot of projects have the acronym. Some have the number. I recommend sticking with that. Something you want to be able to identify inside of SQL Server, but not something that's 16 digits long and doesn't mean anything to anybody. So you want to make sure it's you can track it, and that too. They won't let you go any further. So all right. So now I'm going to move. And so when I move it, what it does is in this instance, it will just take the database, move it, delete the old database, rename it what I just told it to rename. If you're going between two SQLs, it would take it off its original SQL and just move it to the new one. Good question. Oh yeah, I would always back up and then archive the backup.
What was the question?
Because you always need to maintain the link between SQL and the project. I mean, you can if you're feeling squirrely, you can always repath things here. Say you want to move your database, you just throw it over there, and then you can come in here. And if you don't do it right, it'll cause a lot of issues. That's why they provide the utility to kind of step you through it. So did we? Oh, success. So I'll refresh my SQL. Or give it a minute. You can do it. There we go. So you can see it. The copy doesn't exist anymore. It's now the copy move. So that's what this utility is. It's hidden down deep into your install folder. I still have to question where to go sometimes because some's in your app data roaming, some's in your program files. And also, if nobody's aware, also in that folder where the project maintenance executable is, there's this local data cache purge. Yeah, this is a new computer, so I don't have it on my desktop, but I always put it on my desktop and I get into the habit of just purging that cache every time I open it, because I don't know that it truly does anything, but it doesn't hurt. And it could, just prevent those little hiccup issues that you might have where, Because when you open a drawing file, Plant will store a local instance of that drawing file while you have it open on your machine. When you save it, it then updates the SQL Server. So it goes, it can have like a 30 megabit cache, but and I've just experienced issues in the past, and it was more maybe 2013, 2014 P&ID that had those issues that they kind of resolved. But it's just a good habit to get into, just to clear the cache, start fresh, pull all your information from the database. That way you don't risk any sort of duplicate or old pieces of information kind of finding their way in. I don't know if anybody's experienced, trying to tag something that the tag doesn't exist, but it won't let you tag it. That is kind of caused, what I think, by that local data cache, because the tag, you might have named something, changed that tag, and then redid this or that. Well, it kind of stores that in that local data cache. So while you have it open, it doesn't think you can do that because it still thinks that tag exists. And so it's those little issues like that just, that one little click before you open your program every time will really help you guys out. Oh, really?
Yes.
That's what we do.
I don't know if you guys heard that. He said there's a list routine you can get that'll just run it every time you.
It's not even a list routine. We just drop it in there. Just copy that into startup, and it runs every time I put it on the machine.
Oh.
Because it's an executable. It's because it's an executable.
Yeah, it's executable. Right.
About the tag, if it tells you the tag is already in use, this is because if you draw and you insert a valve and you give it a tag and then your drawing crashes. The tag is still in the database in the Pnp tag, I don't know, one table. So it's still there, and only in this case, audit project will remove that. But the always told me is the data cache file is so P&ID or P&ID doesn't always need to look on the server for data. So to speed up the process, but it can cause issues because the data in the local data cache may be old. So
Yeah, like I said, I don't know for a fact that it fixes these things, but it makes me feel a little bit better, and it might prevent those issues that you never know about because you click the button. So it's just one of those little things where it won't hurt you if you don't do it, but it could benefit you if you do. So now that we've gone through and manipulated the databases, it's not terribly intimidating, but again, just making sure you're pathing to the right XML, putting the right database prefix in. If you break something, you can always go back in here. Like when I broke it before the client wanted to look at it, I had about 40 seconds to figure out what I did wrong and fix it. So I just hopped into the DCF and changed that, and thankfully everything works. So these are just the pointers that tell it's just that link between your SQL and your projects. And if that's lost, if I were, if I just futz with that at all, bad things. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to go and open up. That's why I just copied the sample one so I don't have to worry about it. All the data is the same, so for our purposes, we're good. So like I said, that DCF file provides your project link to your database, but there are additional commands that you can do that can actually allow you to view the database tables as you would in SQL Server Management Studio. So if you drill it down, and the databases the tables anyways are in a different form on SQL. So if you run, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The command is dbconnect. I don't know how recent it was put in, but it's also accessible by the drop downs. So if you go to Tools, Palettes, and I don't know why, it's always grayed out. It's grayed out on any machine I've seen. Yep. I'm not sure what the issue is, so just type dbconnect and you can get into it. It's just one of those strange things. So when you run that dbconnect manager, this is the window that'll pop up. It'll show you any drawings you have open. Those are kind of the data, the drawing file sources that you can do queries. Then there's also data sources. This is what allows you to link into your SQL tables. It's a little similar to the data manager, but the data manager is cumbersome, slow, and I personally don't like it. So this is kind of, it ends around that data manager. So I'll configure my source. So what you do, you right click. If you don't have anything in here, right click, configure a source. You can pick an existing one, or you can, add a new one. It doesn't really matter. So you want to do, Microsoft OLEDB for SQL Server. For your provider, that should be default, but it's always good to check. The name of my SQL Server instance. Then I have, network login info, and the database on the server that I want to path to. So since I'm connected there, I'm going to go in and I'm going to look, and I'm going to grab the P&ID database for this project. And then if you set that up, you click connect. So as you can see, what just popped up is fairly, the same thing that's shown for the most part in terms of the project database. So I've just linked to this one. You can link to all 4 of them, just use different data sources. So for the P&ID, I've linked, so there's 3 tables. Information schema, that's what's the architecture of the server. Then you have your system information, which kind of just holds that additional data. I haven't dove into that. I don't recommend doing it unless you want to sleep. And then so in your DBO folder, that's your database objects. You'll see there's 2 different types of tables with different symbols, same core name, one's appended with the Pnp. So what's in the Pnp is every single property that's associated with a given object. Inside of the kind of the non-Pnp folder, that's only the properties that are specific to that item. So in your hierarchies, you have your engineering items, then you have, you just drill down further, the Pnp takes all of that hierarchical properties and displays into the table, versus this guy will just show me a Pnp ID number. So those aren't terribly helpful. And so now that you have access to this stuff, you can go into it, and it's the same data that is available in the data manager, but it's just, in my opinion, easier to use because the data manager has that kind of more graphical interface to it that just causes issues, and I'm frustrated with it. So I don't. What's that? Exactly. So now that we have that link into our database, we can then kind of start playing with things. You can run a query, and queries are nice because they're repeatable. You can create a search query that tell me how many flow meters do I have in my project, how many valves do I have in my project, and you can save those, and it's repeatable with the data manager. If you want a specific format, you got to go in, you got to create a new template, got to do this, that, or the other, hop into project manager. I find it unnecessary. So here's my new query. So here's the query editor, which when leveraged properly, I think can really provide a lot of benefit because you can just start extracting more data. There's 4 different types of queries that it provides. It kind of holds your hand up through the first couple, and then kind of throws you into the near at the end. So say I wanted to find a loop number equal to 1004 in my instrumentation table. So I run that, and I have 3 pieces of equipment. The frustrating thing is you got to sometimes scroll all the way over to actually see what your piece of equipment is. So in this control loop, I've got flow control, the control valve, and the element to detect flow. And so if you're building loop diagrams or something along those lines, and you want to make sure you've accounted for every item in that loop, maybe you run a quick query. And the queries are really what you make it. I struggle with trying to find kind of that home run that kind of is that wow moment, but unfortunately it's not that. It's just, you can use it, you can grab the data, and Yeah. And yeah. So it's all about, if you know what you're looking for, this will help you build a query to execute that.
Can you edit the data from an ABTM view straight? It has a drawing open, right?
I don't know if you have to have the drawing open. You might. I don't think you do.
Shouldn't be an issue.
What's that?
The drawing should not be open.
Should be open to make an edit?
No, because I would assume, since this is just a view of the database, if you make modifications to the database and then you save the drawing, then it just overrides what it is.
No, that's an excellent point.
So,
But if you don't have a drawing open, you can't access your project.
You have drawing
I've been
open.
able to edit data on the SQL management side.
Yeah.
I would expect the same behavior.
Yeah, no, you certainly can do that. So
You can open the drawing, but do not save the drawing. Let me put it. So you should, if you work with database, you should know what you do anyway.
Mm-hmm. So these are all the fields, all hierarchical properties and additional kind of database pieces of information. I can't imagine anybody ever searching or doing a query for a timestamp, because why? But they're up there and they're at the top of the list just in case you feel squirrely. Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to track somebody down because they screwed something up, yeah, you're diving into the timestamps and all that fun stuff. Yeah. So you can, but and so here's all your fields that you can search for if you want to grab all flow transmitters. Oh, I've only got one. Actually, I don't have any. So that was an easy one. That's very possible. Yeah. I don't, because I cancel out of it. Yeah, because if I hit store, then it would. But since I just hop through things a million times. So, and these are all your operators. Is something equal, is something, find everything that's not, manufactured by Siemens or something along those lines. It's greater than that. Give me a range of data. I need all the loops in the 1000 series of my project or the 8000 series of my project. Mm-hmm. Is not zero, is zero. Some of these you can go as crazy as you want with them, but diminishing returns. Okay, yes. If you. Okay, sorry. Nothing. Null is nothing. The absence of. So yeah, there's your quick query. Then you have your range query, which is kind of more. It takes your greater than and then less than and just puts them into. So I want a loop number between 1002 and 1009. So these are all the loops I have just in that range. Again, I'm not terribly thrilled that what I view to be the important data or useful data is all the way at the right, and if you have a lot of properties, it can be a decent amount of scrolling. I haven't explored that. Yeah, that's. I mean, because a query, you run a query on a specific table, so if you want a specific view to show me just these pieces of information, you can build that. Yep. So again, you can, pop through all those things. So then you have your range, then your query builder. So this kind of is getting more into the weeds a little bit in terms of a true SQL query. So it's, you know, so I can, you know, populate, you know, several fields, gives me those. I can keep adding those on. Then I can move them over to the next, keep sorting them to kind of give you that customized view you were looking for. That's kind of what you would play with.
Is the query stored if you store it as a view in the database?
Let's see. So I just stored it. It stores itself up here. So it attaches itself to the drawing. So if you want to run a query on that drawing, it looks like you probably have to have that open. But again, you know, they've only had this for a couple of years, and there's lots of things I even haven't a chance to explore. So that's why I'm kind of showing you guys, just giving you that intro, getting your feet wet of. There's a lot of stuff in here, and it's kind of learning about how will that benefit you. Can you see this helping you when, you know, you have 2 drawings, you're running a query and getting 2 results, not a big deal. When you have 100 P&IDs, that could be a lifesaver, where you don't have to deal with the data manager, because you know, I don't know if anybody's played with the filters in the data manager, or lack thereof. Like very limited, very handicapping. They just don't provide, you know, a whole lot of abilities, and you can only do 1 or 2 levels of them. It's like, show me everything that's not this, or show me everything that is this, and then organize it, you know, from higher to low. So that's what the queries do for you. So that's where you save the query, and that goes. I'll just pop into something else. The wrong thing. So there are some incredibly useless tables in here that you won't need to, you know, drawing categories. Awesome. But if, you know, you want to have different types of drawing categories, if you want to be able to track all your different P&ID drawings versus your ISOs, your orthos, that might be a good tool to use. You can, you know, see how many there are and or different types. Let's see. So this is what it just looks like right now. If I wanted to edit things, you just right-click on that and edit the table. I do not recommend editing pretty much anything to the left of kind of your first property. I mean, you can edit your class name, basically anything that you wouldn't be able to modify through the project manager, don't modify in here, or through the data manager. You know, the timestamps, GUIDs, especially the Pnp ID number, don't touch that. So as long as it's a property, it's something you could edit outside of this. This just provides you a pathway to not have to boot people out of a project if you want to change a selection list or change a gate valve from GV to GAT. So one useful thing, and it's one of those small items, is, you know, selection lists are great, but you got to maintain them. And if you want to maintain them, people can't be in the project. And since I don't personally like working at 7, so nobody else is there, finding an end around to that can be very helpful.
You can edit selection lists through?
It's not terribly, if you can edit it, you can't add to it. So it's or, you know, you have, because when you're in the spec editor, or not the spec editor, selection list creator, it'll let you edit a description of something, but it won't let you edit the value of it. So if I have, you know, FIT, if I want to change that to FT, or, you know, maintain the same description, but change the property itself, you can't even do that in the selection list. So I just broke my own rule that I just said. Don't do anything you couldn't do. But with the selection lists, it's just grabbing a little data, I mean, you can delete it and repurpose it, so it's just a shorter step. I mean, if you really want to make your own Pnp ID, figure out what the maximum number is, and then start there and work your way backwards. And at some point in time, you know, the project and you might meet in the middle, but if you want to, it's a way to do it.
What if you want to print out your selection lists?
Hmm?
But you can't do it from Project Manager.
Well, you should use it. Just export it.
Okay, so
Just saying.
Just sell it to AutoCAD.
So we have, it's called in here, it's Pnp Picklist Values, which, yeah, that's a selection list, okay. And it gives it a pick list ID. So you have to, it won't tell you explicitly this is your piping pick list, but based on the values, it's not terribly difficult to figure out which one you're looking at. Yeah, you could, but with this, I think you can only do one query per table. You can't, I don't know that you can query multiple tables.
What is it?
This is within the context of it.
No, but you
just pick.
Mm-hmm.
you just create your own query based on these two tables, and you link them.
Well, I'm saying, like, when you create a query, I believe it's dependent on the table you select. So I want to do a new. So you'll see it, you know, the query name is, it starts with the table, and then just adds the query. So the query is per table.
Yeah, but in the query you can use SQL statements.
Yes.
There you can link in a join to another table.
Yeah, if you're a masochist, you can definitely do that.
That you can bring. So
No.
we're getting creative now. So that's what I meant. So then you know which selection is behind that.
But for the most part, unless you have a lot of repeats, it's generally pretty simple to tell, and it does differentiate that for you. So, you know, I can go in and modify all this stuff. You know, if I want plant air, you know, make it maybe AP, because that's what your client wants. So it's a nice, just quick little way to go through, and didn't like that, did it?
Yeah, that was because usually
I-
a view you cannot edit a view.
You need to edit table, not view.
You right-click.
Oh, did I?
You pick view, not edit.
Oh.
I'm gonna take you edit P&D.
Yeah, you can try to edit that.
Edit.
Scroll down and see your P.
Well, I exited out of that.
Because well, people, but
There you go.
SQLite doesn't
Now you
allow
can
you
make
to
it AP.
edit. We'll see. Okay.
What?
The view cannot be edited.
Yeah, you opened it as a view again.
No.
No.
Don't take the view. Take Pnp Picklist Values. Without P&D.
Oh. My man.
You cannot edit a view or not the values.
So again, I'm still learning with all this stuff. So any input anybody else has is. Where?
Yeah, but
Okay. Did I not right-click edit? There we go, and it'll give you this delta. That's what I was looking for. I knew I'd seen it before.
So if you do that, then let's say somebody's working the drawing, and
So it won't update anything that's already been selected, but when you go to select it in the future, that modification will be there.
will they have to run sync styles in order to see that change? Will they see?
no.
Yeah, it's not a sync. I don't believe.
You just
It might. It couldn't hurt to run sync styles. It never does. there's all these things, you just develop maybe little ticks that you do, you run it sync style or,
Would it show up in the validate?
No, it would not show up in the validate.
the validate just validates between plant and P&ID. So unless,
To the list selections. Doesn't give
There
an
is no
error.
validate, validate function for that. We only use,
so now it's, if you're on the right table, it's a nice easy thing to do, and it just provides, you can edit both sides of things. We're in the project manager. If I wanted to, I wanted to keep plant air, well, I'd have to delete PA and rewrite the whole damn thing. If it's a one-off, it's not a big deal. If you've got, just a client standard, you might want to create your own or just edit this as you need to. It's, it's all a case-by-case basis. I'm just providing you the tools. It's up to you guys to, implement them how you see fit, and I guess how you're comfortable with doing that, because there are ways to break things, but for the most part, it doesn't let you, it stops you that was the point of my previous table, is to show you that you can't do that. So, you're welcome. And honestly, that's about it. I could keep rambling forever, but if anybody's got any questions.
How do the majority of you modify? Do you do through Database Manager, show of hands? Or Data Manager?
Modify, just do that.
Or modify information within the project. I mean, people do it through, who's doing it just through Data Manager mostly? I mean, the majority? So you're exporting them to Excel and then bringing them back in?
Yeah, no,
Yes, I love that.
That's an excellent way to do it, and keeps people out of the database who shouldn't be, and gets engineers the info they need.
Multiple drawings, definitely export to Excel.
Yep.
modify, manipulate.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, that can get cumbersome quickly.
Yeah. And I like how the data manager will indicate the yellow
What's that?
of the change.
Yeah.
That's true. Good point. Yeah.
To take it off the database? So what you would do is just take all your drawing files and then just move them. And yeah, the drawings should hold that data as well.
But did you want to be able to open it again?
Yeah, that's the thing. Eventually, say you've got a project that's been shelved for a couple of years.
So what you'll do is you'll create a new project, but you'll create a SQLite project. I mean, if you don't want it on a database, or if you want to make it mobile, you can create a SQLite project, copy all those drawings into that new project you've created, and then you have a packaged project that's accessible, mobile. And then if you want to bring it to a new home, put it into the computer, run the conversion, convert it, and then put it on a SQL. Exactly. So that's how you kind of package that up, and that is.
So that takes a little bit of time. I just didn't know if there was an easier way.
No.
there is no migration tool to go back.
No.
Unfortunately, that would be nice.
That would be really nice.
I don't know.
I mean, yes and no. But I mean, we were teaching the class yesterday morning, and a gentleman brought up issues he has with, he's getting information from contractors, but he can't get his contractor into the database, so he needs to create that SQLite copy, give it to the contractor, let them do what they do, then get it back, and then switch over the drawings, which is cumbersome, unnecessary, and can cause a lot of issues. So, yeah, and I'm not sure, I haven't looked into the A360 or the Vault or anything. I don't know if those would provide, a migration tool or...
No, they don't.
No?
No. And if you are using Vault, you cannot use the window authentication because that's strictly to the user that signs in. Just FYI. So you're going to want to use username and password for that because Windows authentication is stuck to that user.
Just for good measure, I'm not... There we go. Oh, we did that too? Oh, we did that? And that? Questions?
you guys have people are importing
Yes.
data changes. One thing I thought maybe we're mentioning for the benefit of, I don't know if anybody else has this problem, but if you have to edit a large number of drawings, and you ever try to export out of the data manager and then import back in, you find the program want to go and like basically ease. Has anybody ever had a crash on it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
But that's why it has that two-step import. It's you import it and then you accept the modified data. So if it crashes before you hit that accept, it'll just should default back.
right. So I guess because so we had a project where we had several hundred drawings that were at all the time. So there's Carson here has a utility called Plant Data Manager that you can make the same kind of data edits just like you would in the regular data manager. But then on the import, it opens up one drawing at a time, makes the changes, saves it, closes it, and iterates the next drawing, So it
Doesn't keep opening it and
stacking all the
choking your computer.
and then, crashes. So it'll actually just,
It's one instance. So one instance.
Yeah, what we've done in the past when we have that is we just batch it. You know, I'll do 5. It's kind of a pain sometimes, but there's the utility. Yeah, it's in order to prevent crashing. Sometimes you just gotta handle it with kid gloves because it's handling a lot of data and moving through a lot of different programs. So yeah, when you have those large Excel files and all that stuff, because it has to go in and has to find it in the database, then it actually clouds it in the drawing, which is, I haven't found it terribly useful. I mean, it's good for checking. It'd be better if you could actually, track, or if you could maintain
The cloud.
the cloud. Because like I've tried printing it before accepting anything, and it's like no, it's visual only. But yeah, it's like client. All right, what changed? All right, here you go. Exactly.
Any other questions?
All right. End of the day, if you guys want to get out of here, so I'll shut up.
Thank you.